Hello everyone. First off, as I'm recording this, I just saw a comment where someone was asking about my cat in the background. Currently, let me check my monitor, there we go, over there. That is Snowball. And I also have a black cat whose name is Rascal. Now, Snowball is typically a pretty timid or cowardly cat. He's the epitome of a scaredy cat, I would say. He actually only comes out after the sun sets, so only in the evening. During the day, he's usually hiding under my bed, back in my bedroom. Rascal, on the other hand, is he lives up to his name, or down to his name. He's a straight up rascal. So I just wanted to say that really quick. But getting to the point of this video, in my previous video about conspiracies, I pointed out that the primary psychological hook of a conspiracy theory is that it gets you to think that you have some kind of secret hidden knowledge, that this knowledge is so important that it can put your life in danger by super powerful forces that are in opposition to you because you're that important that you need to be opposed. And these beliefs alone are able to explain why, despite the ample evidence that the alphabet agencies are incompetent in everything they do, really, some people still believe that they are currently listening to every one of your phone calls through a chip in your microwave, and in case you accidentally say something wrong about 9/11. But as easy as it is to make light of conspiracy theories, in this video I actually want to take a look at the more insidious side of conspiracy theories, because it turns out that the way conspiracy theories are structured actually mimics an awful lot of the behaviors that emotionally abusive individuals do. Now, I need to be very clear about what I'm saying here. Specifically, I am pointing out how the logic and lack of logic, fundamental to the way that conspiracy theories suck people in, has a lot of overlap with the pattern of abusive behaviors you see represented by those who have a cluster B personality disorder. And cluster B personality disorders range from borderline personality disorder to narcissism to antisocial personality disorder, right? So in other words, conspiracy theories, by the very nature of how they are structured, end up parroting the same emotional abuse that cluster B personality disorders do. And so the same kind of things that control victims of those types of people, specifically narcissists in particular, tend to be represented in conspiracy theories as well. But as I said, I need to be clear, this does not mean that people who spread conspiracy theories are themselves emotionally abusing anybody, although some of them almost certainly are. It does mean that the people who fall prey to conspiracy theories have a very strong likelihood of demonstrating the same trauma responses as, say, victims of a narcissist would, albeit it will be to a much lesser degree. And of course, this is a very big claim that I'm making here. And if you paid any attention at all to anything I said in that previous video, I hope that you're using the techniques that I advocated for then to examine this video even. Specifically, I hope that you check for yourself to see whether or not it is even warranted to draw the connection between emotional abuse and conspiracy theories, or if logic would compel you to conclude that it's just a random correlation that has no explanatory power whatsoever. I leave that to you. I want you to actually be thinking through it like that. So with that in mind, let me start with some of the key common tactics that emotionally abusive individuals use to trap their victims. Starting with one of the most obvious red flags that usually comes up first in a relationship, the social isolation that occurs. If you've ever been in a relationship with a narcissist, you will sadly know what I'm talking about. The narcissist needs to be the center of your universe. Whatever amount of attention you give to anything other than them is attention they are missing out on. Thus, everything that you experience needs to be directed towards and through the narcissist before it gets to you. Now, this typically manifests itself in a couple of different ways that are quite common. First, the narcissist will rarely allow you to have time away from the narcissist. The only time they will actually let you do that is if they are getting attention from somewhere else while it happens. Secondly, narcissists will impose rules for you that are intended to keep you away from people who might tell you that you are in an unhealthy relationship. This represents itself, for example, when they control what friends you're allowed to hang out with, or when you can see your family, until you end up going, I know that in order to keep them happy, I'm going to have to skip out on Thanksgiving dinner with my grandparents, for example. At the same time, they will be sowing the seeds of doubt towards those other people. Does your brother really care about you, or is he just jealous that you are finally in a happy relationship? So he's just trying to get you to break up, right? So this, again, is commonly the first step an emotional abuser will take in a relationship, which is why it's such an important red flag to pay attention to. If they can isolate and control your access to counter views, then they can wear you down by the continual repetition of their own claims until, by sheer brutal repetition, you start to accept it. Now, with that concept in mind, think about the first step that occurs in every single conspiracy theory. Everything you think you know is wrong. Oh, you thought what the government said about JFK's assassination is true? You're such a gullible fool. You think the 9/11 Commission told the truth about the planes? You think that what they put in the jab is really going to help you against the bat flu? What's that you say? CNN said? You can't trust CNN. You can't even trust Fox News, for that matter. You can't trust any scientific reports. Those were conducted by NASA, and they faked the moon landing. What person would ever believe anything that you see on PBS anyway? Now look, I'm not saying that you should believe everything that you find, especially in the media, without considering the source. In fact, I specifically argue that you should check all of your sources. But notice how the very first step of a conspiracy theory is to sow that same seed of doubt about every single thing that could possibly disagree with the conspiracy. If someone is asking you not to believe anyone other than them, that is a hallmark of emotional abuse. And that is the first step of both a controlling relationship and every single conspiracy theory. Don't trust what your parents say. They're just repeating Sean Hannity. It's the same tactic. You can't believe anyone else, just me. They aren't interested in helping you, but you can trust everything I say. Now, who makes those claims? It's not someone who is interested in you knowing what is true or not. Now, once an emotional abuser isolates you and keeps you away from any source of information that might possibly allow you to wake up to the fact that the lies they are feeding you are in fact lies, the next step is to gaslight you so that you start actually believing the things that they want you to believe instead. Now, this is commonly done by distorting reality into whatever shape they see fit and just them asserting that that's what happened. And conspiracy theories do the same thing. You will hear things like, this country was working just fine before the people with small hats destroyed Hollywood back in the 1920s. Or everything was better when everyone was patriotic back during the Vietnam War. We were all heroes then. Look, those things aren't true, but if it's repeated enough, you'll start to take it for granted that, the good old days must have been the good old days. And just as an abuser might say, your friends never actually liked you, they pretended to. That's why you always got made fun of in high school. And you'll remember, oh yeah, there were a couple of times that someone did make fun of me in high school. And you'll start to forget all the times you were invited to the after school parties, after drama club, after you did a concert with band, and all of that stuff. Your past memories will become distorted, and you'll begin to view only the stuff that they're repeatedly telling you to believe and remember, and you'll forget everything that runs counter to it. That distortion is why it's abusive. It's not real. And when you start to remember the time in America's past when everybody drove the speed limit and no one ever murdered people of the opposite race in Democrat-controlled cities, and how in the 80s it was only about capitalistic greed, suddenly the lens by which you're supposed to view reality today is no longer enhancing your vision, it is literally blinding you. Now, along with gaslighting, emotional abusers will always target something you're sensitive to, especially if you're afraid of it or ashamed of it, as it is a means to control you. If you're afraid of being abandoned, they will threaten to leave you. If you're afraid of being mocked for your looks, they will mock your looks if you ever step out of line. They will punish you for your misdeeds by pressing those critical buttons. Whatever it is, they will push it and they will prod it until you capitulate. And because the person is both the one who's praising and condemning you, and you have to live according to their whims, you inevitably become paranoid. You're constantly trying to do whatever you can to make sure that the emotional abuser remains happy so that you're not punished. But their happiness is actually being used to control you. So paranoia is the result. And paranoia is common in conspiracy theories as well. Although in this case, it's not because you're being punished for thinking the wrong thing. Instead, it is based on the fact that the conspiracy theory itself is so deeply connected to visceral fears that it permits you to twist your thinking into the realm of paranoia. Again, no one cares if you have the secret of KFC's chicken recipes, but if your secret can cost you your life, then the conspiracy becomes so critical you have to watch your back. You're being threatened. Your only safety is to do whatever you need to do to make sure that the knowledge you have doesn't put you at risk. You will become paranoid by default because your life is on the line. You're risking that. So when you see the police raid someone that you heard about on Twitter and you assume they believe the same as you immediately fear that the FBI has you on a watch list too. And you know that if the wrong people get in charge of the country, they will punish you for wrongthink. And it never occurs to you that every single election for the past 40, 50, probably 100 years, people have said if the other guy wins, it's doom and gloom for the next 4 years. And it's always been the same old thing after every single election cycle. Always new hype for the next 4 years being the worst thing ever if you vote for the wrong way, because without fear, people might start to question whether a system that tells us we have to choose between Donald Trump or Joe Biden is objectively a horrific system of picking a leader for the free world. If you start thinking that, why, who knows what might happen, right? So the final aspect that I want to highlight is how for the emotional abuser, everything you do to resist their clutches will be used against you. If you argue with an emotional abuser, they will accuse you of being mean and therefore not caring about them. If you choose not to argue with them, they will accuse you of being disinterested and therefore not caring about them. No matter what choice you make, the end goal is always confirmed. You don't care about them, and that is a problem. Now, the same effect occurs when you question a conspiracy theory. If you think about how the FBI was too incompetent to even arrest David Koresh without starting a siege and costing the lives of several of the ATF agents, well, that's proof that the secrets Koresh had against the government were too important to risk waiting for a proper raid to be planned. But then you start thinking about how, there's no evidence out there that the government murdered Vince Foster. It must be because the FBI is so good at covering up their tracks that you can't find the evidence. Wait, the FBI is both too incompetent and too competent. And this contradiction doesn't matter because anything that happens because of the conspiracy. It's definitional. So for anybody who believes a conspiracy theory is true, there is literally no evidence possible to convince them that the conspiracy theory is false. After all, if you already have convinced yourself that whatever force is out there trying to suppress the truth is powerful enough to destroy your life just for knowing the secret knowledge they want to suppress, those same forces will be more than capable of manufacturing whatever contrary evidence they need to make it appear that you're crazy. In other words, when you set up with this secret knowledge, the fact that you need a powerful enough enemy to confirm that the secret knowledge is worth having in the first place also confirms that they are powerful enough to distort reality to their whims. Going against the conspiracy is just as much a lose-lose scenario as it is if you go against a narcissist. So, with all that in mind, I ask you again, think about the ramifications of both how emotional abusers operate and the world that conspiracy theories operate within. If you can recognize the effects of an unhealthy, abusive relationship, and you can see those same effects stemming from belief in conspiracy theories, whatever else may be happening, A wise person ought to take heed. They ought to double, triple, quadruple check. There's no reason not to check to see what is actually true, because the truth is the only thing that matters. At the end of the day, emotional manipulation cannot refute objective facts. The only thing emotional manipulation can do is make you too afraid to seek out the objective truth. Now, anything that would make you too afraid to know what is objectively true, whether it's an abusive person that you have in a relationship, or an abusive mode of thinking about reality, that cannot be healthy for your own life. So take that as you will. I hope that it gives you something to think about. If you are convinced that there's these massive conspiracies going on, think about it for a moment. I urge you to actually get to the objective truth that is there, not the fear mode that you're in. With all of that, I hope you all take care to think as much and as often as you can. Take care.